woman that was trying to work herself out of this. And, for me, fortunately, I heard about her childhood first, which made me very understanding then about the things that she revealed later, about our kids. That was the only reason that I was able to stand by her. I mean, somebody that has gone through this, just horrific. And the satanic stuff, I believe it is just another mechanism for a smart perpetrator to be able to carry out this crime. See, you got to look at this in a simple sense.
Yeah.
Dr. Sidney Seymour is a child rapist. He's a criminal, just like, a normal criminal. He doesn't want to get caught. Now, the thing about, a good doctor here is that he's a bright guy. And so, when he figured out through his training that, hey, I can actually, deliberately create multiple personality. I can actually create an amnesic wall through the infliction of trauma. What a great way to avoid things. And the satanic abuse is just a step up from that.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it for a second. If you've got a father that's powerful and, just, in the most simplistic programming, if you say anything, I'm going to kill you. Okay? I mean, for a lot of people, that's pretty much enough right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you go through this other kind of mind control programming than he did, and then take it a step further, you do some more during satanic ceremonies, that child is taught that not only do you have to fear, Sid Seymour, you got to fear demonic forces and other spiritual entities that exist. And, for a child who keeps that child thought as she grows older, that is a formidable wall to get through for her to reveal things.
Of course.
And it is additional trauma. I mean, the type of things that she described in those settings. And it was a very few times, overall, in the number of times that she was molested and raped, this was a very small percentage. But when she recalled those events, it was just, in some ways I wish I had a camera on it, but you can't do that. You can't invade that at the time. You have to just be there for her.
Yeah, of course.
And she relived this, and it was startling.
Yeah,
and it's startling the amount of detail that she gave and everything else.
Yeah. So, I mean, who in the end here, okay, this is obviously isn't, finished yet, but, I mean, who do you think this guy is really, Sidney? I mean, is he a lone nutter, so to speak, but or is he part of something more? Do you know that he had connections with other people within the military, for example, or other organizations?
I definitely think that he's part of a larger group, and that's part of the reason my concentration is so focused on him. Many times people like yourself, myself, and other people that follow this, we want to do something, and it almost becomes a little overwhelming because, as we talked, last week, these things are all linked, and you start really getting deep into the problems that flow from this. So one of the challenges is to maybe concentrate on one area that can lead you step by step to exposing other things. And in this case, this is what I would say. He is part of a group that's been taught this, and as from what I can gather from my ex-wife, is that he was part of a larger group of other individuals that are like-minded. Now that makes a lot of sense. People that have these kind of depraved lusts, it's like a drug. At some point you got to step up, and you continually have to step up. And what Dr. Seymour did was he got himself in a group of people that were of like mind, and therefore there was swapping of kids. They were able to trade off and be in this lifestyle together.
Yeah.
We know that the military has trained people to have this capability, and we would be naive to think that some people wouldn't want to use it for their own self-interest.
Yeah.
And I think that once you pull the weed, which is Dr. Sidney Seymour, up, you're going to find a lot of different roots, a lot of different people connected to that, very prominent people that are involved in the molestation of children. And then the questions will start tumbling out.
Yeah.
What kind of backgrounds do they have? And what you're going to find are these people that have been trained up in the ability to manipulate the mind, to try to get people to do things that they would not otherwise do.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets pretty scary, that we've got people that are doing this. For a more jaded view, let me say something. Our government took the people that ran this program to task because they were doing things illegally and unethically. Dr. Colin Ross has a book called Bluebird that deals with this, about psychiatrists and government agencies deliberately creating multiple personalities.
Yeah.
The unethical actions of these people is just unimaginable. So if you've got a group that basically they don't have a whole lot of conscience, and back then, and I'll tell you right now, that's my opinion of the CIA back then and now. They're just thinking in terms of, well, we want to be able to do things militarily. We want to have control over people.
Yeah.
So we need to do experiments. One of the experiments that was brought out on public record was back in the 60s. The CIA actually set up prostitution houses and hired prostitutes, and then they set up the rooms with two-way mirrors and cameras to film things. They would bring these unsuspecting Johns back to the place, and they would dose them with LSD because the CIA at that time had a real interest in finding out what effect LSD would have on people.
Yeah.
They were thinking about trying to use this once again for extracting information or for some military use. Now, if you had told me this 5 years ago, I would have thought, come on, this did not happen.
Yeah.
But on congressional record, that has been brought out. So if you have people that are of that mind, and then you've got a Dr. Sidney Seymour that they know is molesting kids, is doing these things,
yeah.
Isn't that interesting information for them? How far can you go? Doctor, what happened? Tell us what happened.
Exactly.
I mean, if you've got no conscience, then, you know, they're just thinking, well, you know, the ends justify the means. If we can find ways of manipulating people and we have some test subjects that, you know, obviously wouldn't be legal, but we can do these things and get information,
yeah.
so be it.
Exactly.
And he was involved in, you know, these kind of projects and programs to one extent or another, which were not legal. You know, we've got evidence that Dr. Sidney Seymour was involved in biological warfare testing when it was absolutely illegal in 1982 in a town called Indio, California. We have a witness that's actually in the federal penitentiary. He was with the CIA, broke loose, then got jailed up. He came forward after hearing about our investigation and revealed to us that he had actually worked with Dr. Seymour during that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and his name's Michael Reconcito. He's, you know, get on the internet and widely known and documented, somebody that's been in the intelligence community. And I was extremely fortunate to be able to have contact with him, and for him to be, you know, literally brave enough to step up and tell me. And his description of him was that he is an extremely dangerous man, basically a man of no conscience. That at the time that he was working on biological warfare things when it was illegal, and they liked Dr. Seymour for that. He was a man that had no conscience in that. And interestingly, Susan had told me before I had known any of this about what he had done out in Indio, that she was brutally reprogrammed during an incident in Indio, California. And that was part of the reason we were looking at Indio, to try to substantiate some of her claims. And what we found about that town during that time period was basically just a black ops city. It was basically CIA run. It was out in the middle of nowhere, 20 miles east of Palm Springs. And anybody that's not familiar with that, it's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
And they had people locally that were basically running things. And they were doing different experiments on our Indian reservations, because that way they were not held to federal or state law.
Oh my
God. And that information is documented up and down through newspapers and books. You know, they're doing munitions, testing rail guns and other things, and then shipping arms off to the Contras.
My God.
And it was in this setting that, you know, my wife, before I knew any of that, started talking about an incident where she was brutally reprogrammed in 1982 in Indio, California. And that's what spurred our investigation there, and that's what we found.
I mean, do you have any... do you know if Susan ever went on, you know, like, how should I say this, you know, kind of like missions or you know, did anything for the military like an agent would do? Do you know?
She was not used for that purpose. I mean, what Dr. Seymour did was, you know, he just used what he learned from the military for his own depraved, sick desires.
I see.
And so that's what it was. But him using those mechanisms, you know, that's how he was able to pull off, basically, you know, having her come down and visit. And I'm thinking they're just having a nice little family visit, and I'm up here doing work, and The stories on that are just horrific. The things that were done, and I think that part of what he's about is shock value, to do things almost on the edge of being caught.
Yeah. And this opens up, this area here that we are talking about, opens up a whole lot of questions because, as we talked about last time, basically the Manchurian Candidate, like the book, like the movie, that describes, a president under this kind of, mind control, hypnotic almost. And I mean, according to yourself and after all the research you have done, do you think that it could be a possibility, that, prime ministers, world leaders, politicians, whatever, or could be, under this spell, so to speak, this mind control?
Well, I'll tell you, that door certainly is one that is open. Dr. Colin Ross says the Manchurian Candidate is not a myth, it is not a theory, it is absolute reality.
Yeah.
And in our papers out here in the United States, when Al-Qaeda has given their taped statements, when bin Laden has given taped statements, it has been reported that they have scrutinized those tapes to see if there was any programming to trigger off sleeper cells.
Yeah.
So this is something that is absolutely acknowledged by our government. And I know if you're hearing this for the first time, you're probably thinking, boy, this is just nuts. But, folks, it's not. And if you'll spend some time looking at it, it's there. And it's so important because you've got people in high positions that have a desire to control other folks. And if this started off with a good intention, it has not ended up that way.
Exactly.
And when you think about the ramifications of this, it's just, it's startling. One of the things that we found that was probably their dream weapon is basically a DNA selective bomb, and that is a biological warfare weapon that would basically wipe out one group of people and not another. And that is something that Mike Riconcito spoke about, I've read about, and Dr. Seymour actually was involved in some experiments on wheat fields where they actually were able to splice in and change the DNA of half the wheat field. So you have one wheat field, DNA is spliced and changed. They then spray it with a pesticide, which is basically your bomb. Half the field dies, half the field lives.
Yeah.
And what we've found is that, let's say, you had Europeans, battling, with Arabs to make it ethnic specific, gene specific, DNA specific. And that's the type of thing that once you allow this type of mentality, these are the type of things that they start thinking about.
Yeah.
And, the point of all this is that what we've got to do is, one, just start pulling in our government and saying, no more. You can't do these kind of things, and you can't do them secretly. You can't do them on unwitting participants.
Yeah.
And we started to. And here in the United States, in the mid-'70s, we took a little step. And then it's almost as if the public got scared and said, well, I just don't